Today I want to talk to you about law number 10. That is the law of the price tag. The law of the price tag says the team fails to reach its potential when it fails to pay the price. So let me ask you a question. The question is very simple. When does a person, when does a team, or an organization stop growing? The answer, very simple, is this: when it fails to pay the price required for growth. It is almost always a price problem. This is such an old illustration, I hesitate in using it, but it'll work well here. So let's go old for a moment, okay? It's the picture of the fleas in a jar, and you look at them, but they don't jump out. And the reason they don't jump out, even though they could because there's no lid on it, is because when they put the fleas in the jar, they put a lid on it. Now, here's a flea captive in a jar with a lid, and of course the flea wants out, so they start trying to jump out, and of course every time they jump out, they hit their flea brain against the top of the jar. And you know, I don't know how much feelings a flea has, but you do that after a while, it can hurt. So what's the flea do? The flea all of a sudden realizes if they only jump this high, oh, that feels so good. Now the moment the flea only jumps this high, you know what the flea trainer, if there is such a thing, you know what he or she does? They take the lid off. You don't need a lid on the jar when the flea has determined only to jump so high so that flea will not get hurt again. Now let me just say something. Growth is always painful. In fact, life's painful. Paul Harvey one time said, you can tell you're on the road to success, it's uphill all the way. So basically what I'm saying is, you know, if you're saying, you know, life is good and the team is just gelling and nothing's difficult and everything's easy and we're just coasting, I just want you to know, if you're coasting, there's a reason. You're going downhill. There's a price that always has to be paid. And teams that fail to pay the price, organizations that fail to pay the price, individuals that fail to pay the price, eventually pay a price. Are you with me? Yes. You pay a price for not paying the price. So I'm going to encourage you under the law of the price tag to pay the price. Because that's where the success, that's where the potential, that's where the fruitfulness comes in. So let me give you 3 price points today. Number 1, the price must be paid by everyone. Let's start there. There's no such thing as on the team, few of the team members pay a price and the rest of us don't. Because if you don't pay the price, everybody pays the price for you not paying the price. In other words, everybody's going to feel the effects, and everybody's going to have to pay the price. Many years ago, I did a lecture called How to Get to the Top. And it was a fun lecture, and it was a very simple lecture. But basically, I said, there are a few things you have to do to get to the top. And one of the things I said is, and this is simple, but everything I do is simple, you have to understand. I'm simple. My name is John. I'm a communicator. Not an educator. I have an education, but I'm not an educator. Educators take something simple and make it complicated. I mean, that's what they do. That's just the nature of the beast. If you can understand it, they're disappointed. Where communicators take something complicated and make it simple. And somebody said to me one time, they said, well, everything you do is so simple. I said, it has to be. It's me. I'm not capable of complicated. It's not who I am. So when you look at where we are on paying the price, when I did this lecture on how to get to the top, one of the 4 things that I said about how to get to the top is that you have to get up to go up. Now that's not brilliant. But I know a lot of people who never have figured that one out. I know a lot of people who somehow think that somebody is responsible to carry them to the top. And they've been saying, I am waiting for my ride. They think that there's kind of an escalator to the top. And you just kind of get on the escalator and you, well, you know, I guess, I don't know, what do you do? One day you wake up and you're on top and you say, oh my goodness, look where I am. You know, how did I get on top of Mount Everest? How did this happen? Now, there's a price to be paid to get to the top. There is in your life, there is in my life. I remember I was doing a leadership conference last year, and it was amusing. During a break, I do what I'm doing right now. I just kind of hang around during breaks and say hi to people. I'm just kind of a hang around guy. So I'm sitting on a stool and I'm hanging around, and this young kind of a person comes up to me. Now, I'm going to qualify that. They all seem a little bit young right now. And he looks at me, and he's a little bit bold. And he said to me, he said, I would like to do what you do. So I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I'd like to do what you do. He said, I've been sitting here listening to you all day. And he said, I figured up 1,500 people. They paid X amount of dollars to come and hear you. And you've been sitting there taking drinks out of a cup and teaching us leadership. And people have been laughing, and they paid to hear you. And he said, I want to do what you do. And so, I mean, I'm a little bit amused. I mean, it's kind of like, how do I apply? So I thought, well, you know, maybe we need to do a little teaching. So I looked at him and I said, well, I understand. In fact, I really do understand. I relate to the fact that you like to do what I do. I said, I've got another question to ask you. He said, what's that? I said, would you like to do what I did so you can do what I do? See, the problem is never having the dream. That's why I'm never impressed when people say, well, I have a dream. So is everybody. You go to sleep, you get one. I'm really not impressed with your dream. Well, you know, I've got this goal, and I've written out my goals, and that's wonderful. Good. That means you had a little time in a legal pad or a computer. What really impresses me is not your dream. What really impresses me is when you show me how you're going to pay for it. What really impresses me is how you're going to get there. You start telling me the price that you're going to pay, the hours that you're going to give up, the relationships perhaps you won't have, the money that you will spend, the time and energy and effort. You see, everything has a price. And the bigger the dream, the bigger the payment. Small dreams, small prices. Big dreams, big prices. If you're going to have a great team, there's a huge price to pay. So the question is not, do you have a dream? The question is not, would you like to do what I do, or would I like to do what you do? The question is, would you like to do what I did, and would you pay the price to get where I am? And if you're not sure about that, I'd sit down sometime and tell you what the price is. Because there's a huge price. But that's not only in my life. Any person that got to the top paid a price to get there. In fact, the higher you go, the greater the price. See, the price isn't much at the bottom. I mean, you know, when people start off in life and they say, well, I gave up everything, I say, well, big deal, you had nothing. So it means you gave up a coffee table and an old TV. You had nothing. So I'm never impressed with people who give up something in the beginning, because probably they didn't have much in the beginning to give up. What really impresses me is when you have something and you give it up. You see, sacrifice isn't doing without. I know all kinds of people who do without, never had sacrifice in their life. I know people who do without every day, and it's because they're undisciplined and lazy. So I'm not impressed with what you don't have, but I am impressed by what you willingly give up to go to another level. That's why several years ago I did a cassette tape, a leadership tape called 10 Trade-Offs, usually worth making. And I basically talked about in life 10 trade-offs that you go through, which you basically say, am I willing to trade this for the next level? Am I ready to trade? And every time that you go to the next level, there has to be a trade-off. You never go to the next level without paying something for it. And it's like going to auction. My wife and I, we love to go to auctions. We like to go to estate auctions. And can I tell you something? One of the things I've noticed about auctions is when the price starts off at the bottom, everybody's in it. Well, yeah, I'll bet. What I've noticed is the higher the price, the fewer the bidders. That's the way it always is. So the law of the price tag says if you want to develop a team that's going to stay on top, there is a price that will be exacted out of your life. Always. Let me give you another price point. Not only must the price be paid by everyone, secondly, the price must be paid all the time. Now, here is a great mistake. Somehow we think that if we one day succeed, we stop paying the price. So a lot of people say, if I could just make it, if I could just get up there, wow. You see, the greatest detriment of your success tomorrow is your success today. Success causes people to fail a lot more than failure. It's when I become successful and say, oh my goodness, this feels good, and I made X amount of money, and look at my title, and look at my position, and look at my car, or look at my house, or look at whatever I think that I should look at. It's all of a sudden, that's when the tendency is to coast. And there's an idea that somehow if I work hard enough, that someday I won't have to pay the price anymore. And I want to tell you that isn't true. A classic example of that is that most sports teams, when they win world championships, they seldom repeat. Why? Because when they win a championship, what do? They go on the banquet tour. They go from town to town telling everybody how they won last night and could I have another piece of chicken? And they come to training camp 22 pounds overweight. And they haven't played any ball during the off season. Why? Because they've been telling everybody else how they did it. And that makes you an historian. One of the most important days of my life was in the early 1970s, sitting in a Holiday Inn in Lancaster, Ohio, and having a guy named Kurt Kampmeyer ask me this question, John, what is your plan for personal growth? Now, I didn't have a plan for personal growth. I didn't know I should have a plan for personal growth. Never entered my mind. But it embarrassed me because when he asked me what my plan for personal growth is, I didn't have one. And so instead of being honest and saying I don't have one, I tried to tell him I had one. I didn't tell him I had one. I just said, well, I work hard and I rise early in the morning and I gave him kind of my daily schedule. And he said, no, I didn't ask what you do in the day. I said, I didn't ask what your daily schedule was. I didn't ask what your job description was. I asked you what your plan for growth. And I try to give him other answers. Well, I read books, and you know what I mean. And finally, I just found I don't have a plan. Isn't it amazing all the stuff we go through before we get honest? And I'll never forget, he looked at me, leaning intently over that table at the Holiday Inn. I'll never forget, he looked at me and he said, John, look at me. And I looked at him and said, growth is not an automatic process. You don't automatically grow. You don't automatically develop yourself. How true that is. There is a price that you have to pay to grow. Now, the third price point is the price compounds if not paid early. Some of you today that are listening in this studio are from the financial world. You're in the financial world. You understand compounding interest. You realize that if you can get your money and investments working for you early enough in life, there's a huge return for that as it begins to compound. That is not only true in dollars and cents, that's also true in the price to be paid. You're going to pay the price all the time. That is not the issue. But here's what I'm saying. If you pay the price on the front end, the return has huge potential. In fact, one of the lessons my dad taught me as I was growing up as a kid is a very simple lesson, but I've never forgotten it, and I've tried to teach both of my children this lesson. In fact, if you had stopped my son Joel today and asked him what was one of the lessons I taught you, he wouldn't talk long to you until he would say, Dad taught me to pay now, play later. Basically, it's a very simple principle on the price tag, and what it says is you either pay on the front end and do such a good job paying the price on the front end that you can compound things so that you can play some on the back end, or you play on the front end and you pay on the back end. Now, here's what I want you all to understand. You will pay. So there's no such thing as going through life without payment. You pay. The question is not will I pay. The question is when will I pay? And if you pay on the front end, it begins to be huge of the return on the back end. That's why I love speaking to young leaders and trying to encourage those that are young to begin to learn leadership and begin to learn teamwork and get some of these laws under the belt, because the return begins to be huge. Now, the law of the price tag question is very simple. What am I paying for today that will help me reach my potential tomorrow? Teamwork and get some of these laws under the belt, because the return begins to be huge. Let me explain it this way. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about success. I think, first of all, that people think success is a destination. So they're always saying, someday I'm going to get there, someday I'm going to be that, somewhere, sometime I'm going to do that. And so therefore, success is always somewhere out there, but it's a destination. What I want you to know is success is not a destination. It's a journey. That's why I wrote the book, The Success Journey. I didn't write a book called The Success Destination. Why? Because there's no such thing as a place where you finally one day get to be success. If you're making the right decision today, you're already a success. It just hasn't showed up yet. Are you all right out there? Just as if you're making the wrong decision today, you're already a failure. Just hadn't showed up. See, we confuse success with recognition of success. We confuse failure with recognition of failure. And we have to understand that there's a major difference between both of them. So if I'm doing the right thing today, I am already a success. It just hasn't shown up yet. Now, the law of the price tag is a wonderful law, because what it says is, if I'm paying the price today, if I'm doing the right thing today, the return will come. But if I'm not paying the price today, here's what I found. Shortcuts don't pay off in the long run. In fact, the farthest distance between 2 points is a shortcut. Last January, I had the privilege of being in Central Africa and being at Victoria Falls, and David Livingstone, another great man that I highly admire, of course, was the great explorer of the heart of Africa. First white person to ever see Victoria Falls. So here I am in the middle of the heart of Africa, and as David Livingstone literally blazed a trail, going where no white person had ever gone, having his guides take him through the heart of Africa and exploring the country, and just a tremendous person. Of course, he came from England, and someone sent him a message that got to him via messengers and basically said, David Livingstone, I admire what you do, and I would like to come and join you. Could you please tell me the easiest way to get there? David Livingstone wrote back and said, don't come. There is no easy way. Well, there's no easy way. So pay the price today. Pay it daily. Don't wait for the price to get too big. One step at a time. Because the law of the price tag says this, team. If you're willing every day to pay the price and continue to grow and continue to develop, you'll continue to reach higher potential heights. And the law of the price tag says, if you do that, you as a team will be successful.